Hey everybody, we're back with another Thanksgiving movie month review. And in this one, since it's very close for the sequel to be coming out on Netflix, I will be reviewing Knives Out, which is something I've been wanting to review for a hot while, but uh, I think it's like appropriate time to do it now, considering November, Thanksgiving month, perfect time for like family oriented stuff slash Thanksgiving oriented stuff. And uh, full disclosure, normally I love a good mystery movie, especially like a who done it kind of thing, especially if it's done right. But I was kind of sleeping on this movie when it first came out until you know, uh, reviewer after reviewer after reviewer all talking about how fantastic this movie was. And it's just like the same way with like the movie Split because the directors made something that I didn't really care for, so they kind of put me off on anything that they make uh, in the foreseeable future. But it was around in the last couple of weeks when Knives Out was still in the theaters, and I figured like, you know what? Everybody in that moment keep talking about how fantastic this film is. You know, I want to go and see it. So I took myself to the theater, went to see it. I walked out loving it. And it's like, as far as like non superhero related content, it's one of my favorites. And of course, yeah, it released on Thanksgiving back in 2019. Luckily, before the fucking pandemic. Uh, uh, and of course, Glass Onion. I think the sequel is called something Onion. Yeah, Glass Onion is going to be released on Netflix on December 23rd. So we'll be reviewing that as well. Uh, Looking forward to that. The movie stars Daniel Craig as Benoit Blanc. Oh, and by the way, I really want to know like between uh, the Orient Express, because it's also based off like a mystery novelist. I forgot her name, but the lead detective in that, who's also the director, I'm too curious to see like uh, Poirot. That was the detective's name. Poirot and Benoit Blanc. Who's like the best detective between the two? I mean, leave a comment below. Let me know who is the better detective. But uh, Chris Evans as Hugh Ransom Drysdale, son of Linda and Richard. Ana de Armas as Marta Cabrera, Harlan's nurse. Jamie Lee Curtis as Linda Drysdale, Harlan's eldest daughter. Michael Shannon as Walt Thromby, as Harlan's youngest son. Don Johnson, sounds like a porn name, playing as Richard Drysdale, Linda's husband. Toni Collette as Joni Thromby, the uh, widow of Harlan's deceased son Neil. Uh, Lakeith Stanfield as Detective Lieutenant. Is that even such a thing? Detective Lieutenant is either one or the other. Uh, Typically, lieutenants are higher than detective. Uh, Lieutenant Elliot. Catherine Leg Ford as Meg Thrombey, Joni's daughter. Uh, J. Dean Martell as Jacob Thrombey, Walt's son. Christopher Plummer as Harlan Thrombey. Uh, uh, Ricky Lindholm as Donna Thrombey, Walt's wife. Uh, Edie, Edie Patterson as Fran, the Harlan's housekeeper. Uh, uh, of course, you get like Frank Oz. You might know him as like uh, the I guess associated with Yoda, I believe. Is like a puppeteer. A lot of Muppet stuff. Yeah, voice of Yoda. Yeah, I knew I got that right. Yeah, I'm pretty sure we got like all the players in place. So anyway, uh, Harlan is supposed to be a renowned novelist for a lot of mystery stories. Made like a big name for himself, earned a lot of money from his books. Got himself a nice little house, and the family was gathered together to celebrate this man's 85th birthday. And of course, Martha is there as the uh, as Harlan's nurse, making sure he got his needs met and what have you. Day after the birthday, Fran finds uh, Harlan's body, his throat been slit. Detectives come in, all convinced. I mean, like too convinced that it's like a by the book suicide, but Mr. Blanc doesn't believe so. And I love the interrogation, or not interrogation, but like the questioning of all the people that was at the party, and you know, you can tell that these are definitely like very one percenter type of kind of people. Not like super upper crust, but they still like in that vein. It really hammers home during the reading of the will, like what these people are. They're like, oh well, not even that. It was another retelling of the events of the party that you can tell like these are just, at least for the most part, they're awful people. Uh, so, and I love the part when they was regaling, at least retelling each one's, because of course when somebody's recalling an event, of course, they don't really put themselves in like a negative light. So of course, like, when one person's telling a story, like when the youngest son is telling his side of things, oh yeah, it was the party, it was going great, and then of course him and his wife sitting there, like, you know, uh, as like the birthday cake is being wheeled out, and they're like, oh, we're the closest ones, obviously. But when Linda tells a story like, oh, her and her husband's, they were in that particular position instead. So it's always like this different, ways the event played out. Um, but you soon to come to realize that there's at least three of them have like motives to possibly killing him. Uh, Linda's husband, was confronted by Harlan when he found out about his adultery behind his daughter's back, and he's like, "You tell her, or I will." Then you have the youngest son being told that because he was in control of the publishing situation with the books, and he wanted to, like a lot of famous authors like Stephen King and uh, J.K. Rowling, when they got like their works adapted into movies or TV shows, that's where like the real money is. But Harlan doesn't want to be a part of that, doesn't want his works adapted at all, and decides like, oh well, I'm just gonna just uh, okay, you're not gonna be a part of it anymore. It's like, and in his point of view, he's taking the burden off his son's shoulders. Uh, and then of course you got a Ransom, Thrombey played by Chris Evans, and Chris Evans does a phenomenal job. It's like for like a good 10 years he's been Captain America, the most Boy Scout kind of guy ever. Now you playing this like d bag type of individual. He plays it very well. Uh, uh, well, he wasn't really like a total suspect because he left the party early because he had like a blow up with his with Harlan over. Uh, we later find out about like the will, but uh, he just storms out. Um, so next, they eventually start questioning. Uh, uh, Crap, I just had her name, Martha, and it comes to find out she has this like uh, I guess you can call it a tick or something, because whenever she lies, it's like her body kind of rejects it, and she ends up puking. So that's how people just like know, like, oh, she's very trustworthy because she just physically cannot lie. She's like a human lie detector. I remember watching like Honest Trailers, a video about this movie a long time ago. It was very funny. It's like, okay, why don't you just, I think it's, Honest Trailers. I'm maybe I got it for somewhere else. But it's like, why don't you have Benoit Blanc just post, the nurse with you all the time when you're questioning people, and like, eventually you'll come across somebody who's not being truthful, and like, boom, you probably got your immediate suspect at the very least. Uh, but as because this is like a little turn, or at least like a flip on the who done it kind of thing. Because typically, who done it, you don't find out how things transpired to the death until the end of the film. Kind of like my review of the movie Clue, which you can check out on the channel as well. I reviewed that for the month of October for Halloween. Uh, but instead, it's like through Marta's recollection, who you obviously will believe, you already know what happened. But now there's like, other mysteries that we have to unravel along the way towards the end. So Marta is a very good soul, and she and Harlan has camaraderie. They just become like the best of friends, and they like to play backgammon with each other. And you hear from Harlan as he just, he feels like he can unburden himself, to Marta, kind of like a, pseudo therapist, because he can't really feel. I guess he doesn't feel like he can be that straightforward or honest with his own family members, and he blames himself in part of raising his family to be not self-sufficient like he was, because from all intents and purposes they each had uh something handed to them that they built something from. It's kind of like, this is my personal feelings. It's kind of like the Kardashians in a way, because yeah, they're self-made. Like, no, like in all intents and purposes, you had like a parent that you know actually probably went to school. Well, not probably yeah. She actually went to school, studied about business and all this other stuff, and she used those skills to finagle a way to put you in a place uh of affluence. This is how, like, Thormy feels like, you know that's how this whole conversation with his youngest son is like, like, I'm lifting this burden on you because it isn't fair to you that you uh you know feel like we had to go back and forth on something I put my foot down a long time ago. It's just like, it's like, the his grandson Ransom is, he sees himself in so much of himself in that boy in his younger years, because he's like, kind of entitled. And you hear like his eldest daughter Linda, the way she went back at Benoit Blanc about, like, you trying to bait me, Mr. Blanc. Like I am self-made. Like it's like self-made with an asterisk. And that's how you probably should put it when people just claim themselves to be self-made, but it's like you look deeper into it. It's like you're not technically self-made. Self-made means you just people who had nothing, literally had nothing. Like Thornby, you can argue is self-made because he had nothing. He just like kind of J.K. Rowling, like he technically was poor. I don't know, Thornby's like overall history, but I imagine that uh, it's not that too dissimilar to J.K. Rowling, where she, even like Oprah, they were like, and Tyler Perry, they were poor, and they wrote stuff that became uh, like mega hits that was adapted and was made of even more money. They could be regarded as self-made because not necessarily you have to be dirt poor, but just like you don't come for anything for more after that when these people have like children, sure, there's like okay, like I can afford to make sure they get into a good school, and I can make sure they don't have to, because that's the tightrope I guess parents like that has to make. It's like I don't want my kid to have to suffer the way I had to, but you also don't want. I think Tom Brady made this kind of point, months ago, where it's like I don't want my kids, growing up thinking like, oh, yeah, I'm a rich person, so I can just do whatever I want. It's like, it's like I don't want to be my kids to be spoiled, rotten assholes to grow up to be spoiled, rotten adults. Uh, 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 and matter of fact, I pointed this out in my bad moms review earlier this year on Mother's Day month, which you can check out as well. And I pointed this out where I love the scene where Mila Kunis sat down with her son who was acting, just like a very entitled little kid. Even though they weren't rich, they're middle class, and he expected his mom to do all his homework, and she laid it out right in front of him in a very succinct, like eye to eye, not talking down to him or not, with a, uh, like a tone or a voice. She just tell his, her kid like it is. Like, look, you're gonna have to learn how to do your homework by yourself because if you don't learn about doing something like this, something as basic this by yourself, then you'll grow up to be one of those self-entitled assholes that you expect your girlfriends to, pick up after you and all that stuff. Like, I do not want that because I do not want to raise a self-entitled asshole. That ends up hurting women down the line and cause like a big ripple effect. So I need to nip it in the bud now. And that's how Thormy kind of feels at this, point where it's like, I wish I'm pretty sure he wished he would have done that kind of thing when all these kids were little. And like, putting like, look, I don't want you being self-entitled assholes. I'm not going to make sure you struggle, but I'm not going to also make you sure, like, you don't, like, have like you feel like the world's in your palm and you can do whatever you want either, because like you will have like a nasty view on things and like a worldview that's going to be stuck in your DNA at a certain point in your life, because you get set in your ways at a certain point in your life, and that where it is that made you it's going to be that, and it's hard to get out of that. And it's like, so anyway, uh she was trying to Martha was trying to give Thornby his because she gives him morphine as uh, part of his medication, so it's a specific dose he has to receive medically, because they were goofing around. The the vial she had fell down. Well, she wasn't really paying attention. Well, she was kind of sort of paying attention because she didn't look at the vial she was using. She just like grabbed what she feels like was the morphine, gave the specific dose, but then once she realized, looking at the label, like, oh, I gave you a different thing, and she's trying to rush to find the antidote in her medical bag, but it's not there. She's freaking out, and I love Christopher Plummer's role in this. He's because he played it so calm in this situation. He wasn't freaking out, and he already because he write all these mystery stuff, so he knows like somewhat how like okay we live practically out of in the middle of nowhere. Only like what the nearest hospital is like 30, 60, something like that miles. So they will be here in like 10, 15 minutes, and the drug you gave me will take 5 minutes to kill me. So even if they make it all the way out here, I'm dead anyway. And he decides to tell her what she, despite her trying to call 911, he hangs up the phone and explains to her, like, look, your mom is here illegally. I can't allow, all this trouble to befall your head. You're a good person. You don't deserve none of that. So you have to do exactly what I said. He gives her this step-by-step instructions because he knows his little mystery stuff. He knows what the cops are going to ask and all this other stuff. So you got to do this, this, and this, and this to make sure that you're not implicated in any way. You'll probably be questioned, but if you do what I say, then you won't be this. You'll be the last person they suspect instead of the top one suspect. And she's worried about her vomiting, and I love this because it's like Thornby's like, okay, I understand that. So if they question you, which they are, you say specific truths. You tell them specific things that you know are true. That way you cannot be lying. And he ends up, slitting his own throat as she, does what she is told. And so while she's being questioned by Blanc and the detectives, she, doesn't vomit. They all believe her story the way she told it in a specific way, but she still went, to the bathroom to like vomit because she's still like, it's still technically a lie, I guess. But Blanc takes her as like takes her as his pseudo Watson to his Sherlock. And you can't not make a Sherlock Holmes in a mystery whodunit kind of situation, or just a mystery in general. And he points out that because nobody, even he doesn't know who hired him because he was hired by a mysterious person who said like, oh, Thornby is dead, and he got like an envelope with the news clipping, and that's why he came all his way, being like the world's greatest sleuth. Apparently, you cannot point or at least figure out who possibly hired you, and clearly you're very smart. But he puts her as like the Watson to his Sherlock because, as he puts it, you're a good person. And he highly suspects a lot of these family members because because his assertion of each one of them isn't positive. And one such occasion, I forgot what part of the movie it is, but I wanted to bring it up because typical in a lot of family gatherings, not all, but this all depends on how the majority of the family view things politically. Of course, you have those political, conversations, and there's always that one thing you can't have, one thing you cannot discuss over a family dinner, especially Thanksgiving. politics. And of course, this during like the Trump administration, before things really spiraled in 2020 and leading into January 6th. But they didn't overall outright say it, but it was like like what it was like going. And then of course they had a discussion about like illegal immigrants and not Don Johnson, not the actor, but the person he's playing, Richard. That's going on, having like a back and forth with Meg's mom, Joni, who, oh yeah, I forgot about like Joni. She had like a situation with Thrombey when he finds out that the money he's been like, kind of like an allowance, wired to her in order to pay for Meg's school tuition. She'd been skimming off the top. And once he found out, he's like, "Oh, this is the last check I'm writing," and after that, you gotta figure things out on your own. So that's a whole nother thing. But she had like a back and forth with Richard over, about like illegal immigration, and then all these people, maybe except for the exception from Meg, who honestly is probably like, I don't think she's as terrible as the rest of the family. I think she's probably the most, except for maybe one bad decision she made. She by and large probably like the most decent among them, but Joni and Richard like sitting there like Joni obviously they just overall just talking, and people like, because I remember having like a debate one things, or at least not on Thanksgiving, but it was like a week or so before Thanksgiving. I went to see family members in Chicago. Take a bus ride back to my old neighborhood from the suburbs back to Chicago, and I remember having a discussion. Like certain like politics and stuff like that. We all pretty much like left leaning family members, so it wasn't like a heated discussion. We just all just, not that it's like a whole silo or anything like that, but we have like a healthy exchange. But this is like it's one of those moments where it's like one side is obviously right leaning, while Joni seems to be, I guess, left leaning, but seems more like the hippy dippy kind of lifestyle kind of person. And it's not even like a smart debate. They're just like spouting things or rhetorics. But he and a lot of people, trying to use Martha as like a an example, not knowing anything about this woman, even though they all claim like, oh, we wanted you be at the funeral, we all consider you family, but neither one of you, for maybe the exception of Meg, know where this woman, her country of origin. Y'all saying like Guatemalan or Ecuador or something like that, and it's like you don't know this woman at all. He never even tried, and as he tried to use her as an example, like, see, Marta and her family got here the legal way, and it's like, as long as you do that, like, you're great, like, welcome. But if you try to do it illegal way, no, like, you gotta go back, blah blah blah. And as he's trying to say this thing, like he's saying it in a nice way, he hands her, a nurse, his plate, empty plate, like she's uh, uh, like is the maid, like she's the maid or something like that. It was just like, this is like kind of discussing people. So while Blanc is going through his little investigation, Ransom eventually comes back, and you see this part, like almost one of my favorite part of the entire film. How like uh you know a lot of these people do not like Ransom because he just like just an entitled shit, uh, and he just reveling in it, and uh, and he just starts telling everybody, like eat shit, you eat shit, you eat shit, you eat shit, you eat shit. And you hear Michael Shannon's like, I'm not eating one iota of shit. That's just, uh, and then you hear like Richard, because once they after uh, the youngest uh, Thornby son, Waltz, his son, who is pretty much like a freaking super right winger, just trolling people on the internet. People call him like the Nazi kid, and he overhears, shouting mouths match between Ransom and Harlan, and he only makes out like two words. And it's like uh, it's like I forgot what the words is. Basically, you're regretting this kind of situation, and come to find out that Ransom's been cut out of the will, and uh, and of course, like people was thinking like, oh, he deserves it because he's just been like a complete asshole. Um, and then eventually, and all the while, Blanc is going over his investigation. He brings Marta along, who try to sabotage certain things because she forgot to like do certain things when she was told, like avoid certain cameras when she's seemingly leaving in her car, and she has to make a turn before or make a turn after she passed a certain camera at a particular way on the area of the land. So she sabotaged like the videotape and steps over like a muddy pathway. So they were reading of the wills, and Harlan left everything to even the house to Marta. It's shocking her, and Ransom leaves out like laughing at everybody, and while everybody's going ballistic, and like Jimmy Lee Curtis is always amazing, and it's like, are you stupid, were you stupid, my father? And then the police have to like get in between them, and like she trying to leave out her car when starting. Ransom brings her into his car, and like nice little like jab at them as he's peeling off. He's yelling at them what they told to him. It's like, I think this is the greatest thing to all of us, the greatest thing to happen to all of us. And so so he takes her to the diner to give her something to eat, and then he gets like a spare bowl, the empty one, to put in front of her, knowing she just had like a whole plate full of beans, and asks, okay, like, tell me what really happened. And she tells him what really happened, and he explains to her like, we're gonna figure this out. As long as you give me like a part of my fair share of the inheritance, then we'll keep you out of jail. So they go over the toxicology report. She's eventually find out like about email. Well, I'm kind of far. They find out about the toxicology report. We need to like make sure that we fix it, because once the toxicology comes in, they're gonna believe that you had a hand in Harlan's death. They're gonna know you had a hand in his death. So they come there. The place is completely burnt down. Not like, oh, you can't. Like I'm pretty sure, like any technology these days, anything that's being recorded is fed into a different system, so that way you can pick up the feed before it cuts out. But they made it seem like, oh, the cameras are destroyed, so we can't have nothing. Like that's bullshit. Uh, it's probably a nitpick, but that's something that kind of stuck out to me when I saw it in the theater, and still today. But she noticed there's like an email of the person who's blackmailing her, because this blackmailer has the only copy of the toxicology report at this point. So meet me at this particular junction at 10 a.m., which they only have like a short time to get there. So they get noticed by Blanc and the detectives. They try to they lead them on a high-speed chase before they eventually get pulled over, and they take Ransom away. And Marta eventually, with Blanc in tow, I really like, I want to take a moment here to bring up my love for Daniel Craig's performance in this. Even though his, southern accent is very Foghorn Leghorn, which Chris Evan Ransom like points out, like, enough of your Foghorn Leghorn drawl. It's like, that is Huey. It's like I said, boy, like there's a donut inside another donut. There's a donut hole, and it's like that very is it gets good in certain parts, but then it just falls into cartooniness, and I'm not sure, but I'm eager to know. In Glass Onion, is he still gonna lean into the cartooniness of the voice, or is he trying to? I learned from my acting class, you really gotta just commit to the thing, because 9 times out of 10 it might work out in your favor. And I just hope he doesn't dial the accent back. I think we all kind of like enjoy, as cartoony as it is to a lot of people. I think it's a great move. I kind of like the Foghorn Leghornness of his voice. But they make a stop. Seemingly she's got to take care of her errand. She goes to the meeting place, sees Fran, assuming Fran was the one, but it turns out she's not, because she's somehow overdosed. And then she's whispering like, "You did this," and instead of running away, she decides, no, like, I can't leave her like this. I'm gonna call the cops. Damn the consequences. I cannot leave this person to die. So they're in the hospital. She confesses all the events as she sees it to Blanc. And by the way, well, matter of fact, I'll wait till the end. So she decides, okay, I never wanted any of this. I'm gonna tell the family it's my fault, and I'm gonna relinquish everything back to them, because I just didn't want to deal with any of this. But oh, I forgot about, like, because earlier, like, Meg's trying to, like, under the pushing of her mother and the other family members, trying to convince her to come back so they can try to worm their way and trying to get back their inheritances. And even Walt at one point just shows up at her family's, I don't know, I think it's like, yeah, I think Marta got her own apartment, because I thought, like, for a moment that she lived with her mom and her sister, but I guess she got her own place. He just shows up as she's trying to leave her apartment, and pretty much threatening to, like, as he found out about the mother being here illegally, and just trying to, like a very nice tone and stuff like that, trying to get her to get the money and stuff like, the inheritance back. But anyway, as he's trying to confess her recalling of the events to the family, Blanc stops her once he reads the toxicology report that she eventually finds, Marta finds in Fran's little secret stash where she hides her weed. And I like the moment with her and Meg because, like, Meg, apologizes because, like, like, I was pushed. I didn't want you to being forced into doing whatever you didn't want to. Like, and early in the film, when, like, Marta comes in to be brought to be questioned along with everybody else, one of the policemen, said, like, "Oh, hey, are you the help?" And then Meg intervenes. It's like, seriously, dude, the help? Come on. It's like, she says she's Harlan's nurse, asshole. You can see, like, moments like that, even like with the apology when she, made like a bad choice that, she was forced into doing, trying to push Marta to coming back. She apologizes immediately. And it's like, it's like she shows, like, Meg got a good heart, and she's not her family. She's not a spoiled, entitled asshole. But she's, she gets peer pressure like anybody else, in the world. So you can't fault her. But everybody else is kind of a shit person. But Blanc stops her. She goes in a different room with the detectives. Ransom being brought in, and Blanc, starts putting everything together. And come to find out that, Ransom. Some people call him Q, but Ransom, who decides to, because he was being cut out completely, decides to sneak his way back to the house. There was like a secret passageway that somehow nobody in his family knew about except for, like, Ransom and Harlan for some reason. Sneaks in, switch the labels on the vials, and trying to frame Marta into, because once he come to realize from Harlan that she's gonna be getting everything, you want to make sure that she frames him. And there's a Slayer rule that the person who inherited assets all gets sent back to everybody else that didn't get anything, or at least divvied up amongst the rest of the family that wasn't wasn't going to get, because of the Slayer rule that, the person inheriting this got caught up in suspected, like a crime, murder, or something on that level. So what they get is null and void at that point. So Blanc points out to Marta that, what you gave Harlan was the correct dosage, because you done this like 1,000 times. So you just instinctively knew that because of the level of the vials, because you use one a little bit more often than the other, so you knew instinctively which one to grab without even looking at the label. It wasn't until you looked at the label that you second guessed yourself. And Marta get called from the hospital. She says, like, "Oh, Fran's gonna be okay," and, like, Hugh knowing that the jig is up, just angrily points out, like, just confesses to everything. And then Marta, in hilarious fashion, pukes all over this guy. And like, what the shit? And it's like, oh my god, I don't like watching people throw up at all. It makes me queasy. But then she points out, like, you know, friend's dead, and you just confess to everything. And like one of the detectives were recording everything. Like, wow, you just had that handy. You didn't know what's gonna happen. But then, uh, Ransom's like, you know what, fuck it, and then grabs a knife out of Harlan's collection and tries to just right in front of three police officers or people of the law, and tries to commit murder in front of them, and like and attack this woman. But it turns out to be more of like a prop knife, so it was retractable, so it didn't kill her. So they haul him away. Linda finds this little secret note that it has an invisible ink that only because she and Harlan had this, because he, just like with like Ransom, they had this kind of camaraderie where like they like to, because just like with Marta with like backgammon and all these other games, she and Ransom the only two people that can challenge him intellectually like that, and him and Linda has a little secret code that that they like to pass with each other. Only they would know how to figure out. So she reveals the uh, invisible ink, showing, telling her that what her husband been up to. And it's a nice little touch where, like, one moment when you see, after this part, and you see in another part where Richard was turned around, he has like a black eye. It's like, yeah, no doubt. But I like this moment with Blanc and Marta, which, by the way, Daniel Craig and Armadale Armas, their chemistry is fantastic. It was nice to see her in the final James Bond film, which I did not expect her to see to see her, and she's like this badass secret agent and stuff that's only there for like 10 minutes of the film, but it's an awesome 10 minutes. It's like she's like a new recruit, but she's completely awesome. It's not like one of those kind of moments. I reviewed the films. You can check out on my channel as well of my review of the last James Bond film. But it's like usually when you typical spy movie, you get this new recruit that's just fresh out of the academy or something like that. They're usually kind of like dorky or inept or just passed by the skin of their teeth, but they green behind the gills. But no, she is just awesome across the board. Like, you can see why she probably passed with flying colors, because she's just kicking ass, got a sharpshooter. She's just nervous, so she drinks a lot. But she's just like so awesome in that. Oh my god, I love Armadillo Armas. And it's like her birthday is very close to my birthday, so she's like the same age as me. I just would love to meet Armadillo Armas, because she is awesome. She, of course, she's gorgeous as hell. But I imagine, just like with Michael B. Jordan, I imagine me and her could have like a great kind of friendship, because I imagine me and her probably have like eye to eye on a lot of things. But anyway, she and Blanc had this discussion where she's asking him, like, you think I should help them out? Like, what should I do? And Blanc is like, I know what I would do if I was in your situation, but you're a good person, so I know you'll pretty much like will do what's right. It's pretty much up to you. And then it's nice to be left to interpretation. You imagine at the very least she will have some kind of allowance for each one of them or something. But given what she knows, how each one of them are at their core, is a very case by case how she might handle it. But I love this little final shot. Everybody raves about this final shot where she's literally on the balcony of her house while all the zombies are, on the ground looking up, as she's sipping, I think it was Harlan's cup, but it's hers now. And she's sipping this cup where it has the, you can see clear as day, just for the camera and the audience, was like, uh, uh, my cup, my coffee, my rules, something like that. And it was a nice little final shot. And she just, sipping it defiantly. And I was like, I love that. I love that. This movie is fantastic. Aside from like certain things with like, Blanc saying like, I already knew you had like a hand in this because I noticed like a small drop of blood on your shoe. And it's like, okay, then why lead her on this little rigmarole where she's, on this high speed chase with you, which she should have just been, brought in for that alone, and tampering with evidence, which you probably knew she was doing, given the fact that like, all this little stuff was like, okay, that part was a little weird. I was like, you knew, instead of like just, putting using her as like a chess piece essentially to get to the truth or whatever. Uh, uh, and then of course about like the burning of the toxicology building and like, oh, you can't get the data. Like, fuck you, you can't get the data. The thing, or the camera feed is like, just because the cameras are destroyed doesn't mean what they're recording isn't stored somewhere you can still pick up. It makes no goddamn sense. And then Ransom, the things he was doing, trying to, send in the ransom note or like the blackmail stuff, and it's like he doing it and even burn down the building. And it's like, you don't have gloves on. Anybody can easily pick up these fingerprints and find out like who sent this and who burned down this. It's like you leaving evidence. It's like someone who's as smart as you shouldn't be this dumb. So that's my little nitpicks so far. But other than that, this movie is phenomenal. I'm looking forward to Glass Onion. Hopefully this is a little, I don't want to say tighter, but it's just like, because not every movie's perfect. There's always going to be some writing error here and there. But it's like, something like, oh, the cameras are destroyed. It can't get the feed. It's like, don't do something that obvious that any person in the audience would probably say, like, that's bullshit. That's all I got to say on that. But look forward to Glass Onion. I will be reviewing that like, maybe not right away, but at least a couple of days after. That's how I usually do my movie reviews of something that recently came out. I give it at least a couple of days for people to go see, and then that 2 days later, that very afternoon or evening, I will do the review with the word spoiler review on it, so that way, even if you still haven't seen it, you don't have to click on it until you have seen it. So that way, just out of courtesy. But yeah, that's my review for Knives Out. So leave a comment below. Let me know what you thought of the film. Follow me in the links in the description. Hit the notification bell and that like button. If you get my subscribers up to 400, which is very close now, I will be doing a Hot Ones challenge video for like a milestone celebration. I'll be trying out all the different hot sauces from the show Hot Ones. So look forward to that once we get that 400 marker. So let's keep it going, guys. And I will see you guys a little bit later for some more reaction videos, as well as more God of War Ragnarok. I will be doing like a part 2 of the walkthrough later on, so look forward to that. You follow me on my Twitch channel, twitch.tv/talkativecarl. You can watch me live streaming lots of video games. And I still haven't finished Gotham Knight. I'm still playing that, as well as Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, so look forward to those as well. And Multiverses, because I want to like continue playing as Black Adam, because his gameplay is phenomenal. Anyway, I will see you guys in a little